Hello everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the 2018 MacBook Pro and see how these particular MacBooks hold up in 2025. Now, there's a couple of different things to kind of keep in mind here within these types of devices. Number one, the 2018 MacBook Pros, they were good when they first came out, right? They brought a lot of stuff to the table. Unfortunately, they probably wouldn't really be worth buying in any capacity as of this point. There are significantly better types of devices to go and buy. And when you kind of take a look at a MacBook, it really just doesn't make a lot of sense to go and buy in really any capacity anymore, right? When there's way better options out there. So we'll take a look at these things throughout the whole entire video. First things first, I will definitely tell you, in my personal opinion, with a device like the 2018 MacBook Pro, like I said, there might be better options out there. So if you want to pick up any of those types of other MacBooks that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of these types of MacBooks. These MacBooks came out back in 2018. And when they first came out, I will definitely tell you, they were very, very decent types of MacBooks. So the build quality of these Macs pretty much stayed the same for several generations. In fact, when you kind of look at these MacBooks and the newer ones, there still is a lot of familiar design language. With these types of MacBooks, they came out in two different sizes, a 13-inch size and then a 15-inch size. But the best way to kind of think about it is that within these types of sizes, they're relatively kind of the same type of layout, meaning that there's not really anything super insane or different kind of going on here. You're getting a bigger display, bigger battery in the 15-inch, but the 13-inch still looks and feels pretty good too. Now, when you kind of look at the top, they just have this kind of, familiar design, just giving you an Apple logo at the very top, which is nice. You're getting the Thunderbolt ports on the sides of this particular device too, which is still very nice. I love being able to go through and, pick up these types of devices, and they look pretty good when it comes down to that. And the fact that these things were giving you up to 4 ports on the sides was something that was really, really nice. For several generations of MacBooks after this, when the M1s came out, that was kind of the biggest downside. You were running into MacBooks that weren't giving you enough ports, right? Or you were only maxed out at 2. Now we do have ones that have SD card and so many other things, but we still have yet to have another MacBook Pro to give us 4 ports, 4 USB ports. And these ones actually did have that type of capability, which is kind of funny. On the bottom, you don't have much except the ability of unscrewing your plates and then, kind of screwing new ones in if you want to. These MacBooks, I think still, like I said before, look and feel pretty good. Again, there's not too many issues you kind of have going on here. And if you are going to go through and pick up a MacBook, I definitely do think these things still look, and feel very, very premium, which is something that's really nice to have. Now, flipping this thing open, you still basically get this beautiful display. You can say a lot about these Macs, but these displays still look and they still feel very, very premium. And that is something that I've always loved about these types of Macs. They look very good and they feel very good as well. And I do think from that side too, if you're going to go through and pick up a MacBook, this is a really nice thing to kind of remember, is that the display itself is very good. But on the bottom of this display, that's where things start getting really frustrating. These MacBooks, right, really, they gave you these types of keyboards that were just so faulty. The keyboards inside of these MacBooks were so messed up and they were so faulty and they were giving us so many issues. These were those standard butterfly keyboards we used to have. For some people, maybe they liked it, but there was very little travel within the keyboards. It was very, very small. It just didn't feel right, but they would also fail all the time. This is probably one of Apple's biggest mistakes because they ended up having to go through. So with these keyboards, they were, just a really big mistake for the most part from Apple. And I kind of wish they could have done a little bit of a better job. But again, what are you going to do? There's not really too many things you can kind of do at this point. But I would say the trackpad still feels very good. It's still a fairly large trackpad. The touch bar on these keyboards too were just kind of either hit or miss. I'm so used to these function keys now that when I actually switched over to my other, MacBook for a second, my M1 MacBook Pro with a touch bar, it was a really big surprise. I was so used to it for a year or two. I switched over to my current generation M1 Pro MacBook, and then to go back to my other one with the touch bar, it was very, very weird. So I could only imagine that with the 2018 one, that's going to be much slower. It's also going to be it's going to be an adjustment period for sure. There may have been a model that didn't have a touch bar, but I think for the cheaper end model, but still it's a really interesting thing to kind of keep in mind there. So we talked about the keyboard, the trackpad, the display. Now, the internals of these MacBooks were also something that was very interesting. You have to remember that these were the Intel style MacBooks. So the Intel MacBooks, they were kind of these types of devices that were good in performance, but they weren't really that great. And that was kind of the situation that we were in for several generations. They weren't the best performing devices of all time. They weren't amazing, but they were good. And for a Mac, because they were just, pretty basic, it was a good performing MacBook, but it wasn't that great. There were also some throttling issues that a lot of people had inside of these types of MacBooks as well. So as soon as you booted it up for the first time and started using it, it was okay. But when you started using it even more and more, you would see that the fans would kick up. You would see that the battery life wouldn't be that great, that it would throttle under normal kind of conditions. That was one of the biggest issues for this MacBook as well. So you're kind of running into the situation where the performance really isn't going to be that great, but the performance for basic stuff would still probably be okay. So if you're trying to do like Microsoft Word files or Office, or if you're trying to do like basic web browsing and gaming a little bit, this thing will probably be okay. I've seen like Fortnite be able to be decently played on this type of MacBook on like lower conditions. So that was one of those things to keep in mind. But I would probably say beyond that, this really isn't one of those types of Macs that I'd recommend buying from a performance perspective. You're really going to be kind of hitting the limit when it kind of comes down to that, which is a really big thing. But also, because because this MacBook's turning 7 years old now, you have to remember this Mac, it's going to be very limited in terms of software support coming out in the future. So this thing is going to be already fairly limited when it comes down to the software support. So that right there is kind of a problem. On top of that, the battery inside of these MacBooks have also gone down. Theoretically it's the same size battery, but because they've been out for so long, the battery has degraded year over year over year. So it just makes less and less sense to go through and buy something like these types of MacBooks when it comes down to it from that side as well, which is actually a really big disadvantage. So you're kind of looking at these types of Macs and you're like, well, why would you want to go ahead and basically buy a MacBook like this anymore? Right? And that's exactly what I would try to hit on, right? There really isn't a big reason why anybody should be buying these types of MacBooks anymore. There are significantly better MacBooks to go ahead and buy. I think like an M1 Pro MacBook Pro would be a really, really good option. An M1 MacBook Pro, not even the M1 Pro, the standard M1 MacBook Pro would be a very good Mac when it comes down to it. I think that one would be really good. You're getting a lot of capability. And I think within that type of Mac, I think that one would be a really, really good option. I think another MacBook to throw in here would be like an M1 MacBook Air. I think if you want a better performing MacBook from a performance perspective, an M1 MacBook Air would be able to give you a lot of capability, would be very, very fast. And it would make a lot of sense for me to recommend that type of device to people as well. So you have a couple of different options. Again, if you're trying to get the best value per dollar one, I think an M1 MacBook Air, it's going to be a better option here than this 2018 MacBook Pro. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.